Can I just check, show of hands, how many of you are clinicians who see patients? Okay, good, few. Okay, and how many of you see adolescents? And how many of you like seeing adolescents and find it really easy? Okay. So I have 15 minutes to make seeing adolescents easy. I think it's a bit of a tough call, but let's try. There's very little evidence out there on how to build therapeutic relationships with adolescents. And most of my talk is going to be based on the 19 years since I started medical school, observing doctors, health professionals over time, picking up bits of literature, seeing good and the bad. And I think I'm going to share some snippets with you for just 15 minutes about some ideas I've had. And I'm just going to focus on the first 2 minutes that you have with a patient. Okay, because otherwise there's far too much to talk, and the title I got asked was about building. So why don't we start with the foundations? The first 2 minutes you see with a patient. And the first thing is really simple. What's in a name? Okay, how do we introduce ourselves to patients? Now, one thing I found is that historically doctors have always been called doctor, and it would be Dr. White. But with young people these days, who is another professional who they call Mr. or Doctor or by a title? In England, it's teachers. Anyone else? No one, is there? And actually, if you think about our relationship with teachers, do we have the sort of relationship with teachers that we can talk about difficult personal things? Or that we can open our heart to, or that we can tell someone that we're wetting the bed at night, or that we're being bullied, or that we're feeling suicidal? And I'm thinking not. You know, do we have the same relationship with policemen? Because some of the research, one interesting bit of research I've read was that it was comparing interactions with doctors was in the same group as talking to policemen and to teachers. And we've got to try and break down that barrier so that patients can talk to us. And we know that obesity is incredibly difficult to talk about. So generally I say, my name is Billy White, I'm a consultant. You can call me Billy. And it's amazing how so many of them look at me like, oh, that's a bit weird. Anyway, they kind of get over it. And then I say to the young person, what's your name? Because so often we get people's names wrong. I saw a patient for ages until one day I heard his parents call him a completely different name. That was on the records, and I was like, why are you calling him that name? I said, oh, the name on his medical records is the name of his dead brother. I said, oh. Well, you know, his older brother died when he was very young, and so to remember him, we named our next son the same name. Can you imagine the impact of every time you go to the doctor being called your dead brother's name? So my name's William. No one ever calls me William. Not even my mother, when I'm naughty, calls me William. Nobody calls me William. Okay, if someone shouted out William from over there, I wouldn't turn, because that's just not me. So when I was a teenager and I broke my collarbone and I dislocated my shoulder and I went to the doctor and they called me William, I was like, who is William? That's not me. And actually, if we can't get our names right, isn't that such a core part of it? And in some of the qualitative feedback of some of the work we've done, one of the patients noticed, he even called me by my nickname. How did he know that? And it felt that she said that one of the things that our team were doing is they were really getting to know people and what they were about, who they were. And a key part of it is their name. So what's in their name? And I asked the young person first, who are you and what do you like to be called? And then I say, who have you brought with you? And they kind of look at me going, well, he's a bit weird, isn't he? I haven't brought them, they've brought me. But they soon start to get the focus that actually, I'm really interested in this young person. And that the majority of this consultation is going to be with this young person, and that the parents are going to be there to help. I'm going to bring them in. But this is all about listening to young people. Because my perception is, from multiple consultations I've sat in over the years, is that young people are generally not heard. They're saying to us, hello, I'm here, listen to me. Whereas far too many consultations are happening with the parent. So small talk. Who does a bit of small talk when you first start to meet to meet your patients? Okay, what sort of small talk do you do? Because we've all been taught small talk, make it nice and easy, let's do small talk. Okay, what small talk do we use? Football, okay.
Interests.
Okay.
School activities.
Okay.
Something they're wearing clothes.
Okay.
Style. Or...
Okay, so you're just picking up something that, anything?
Yeah, and they probably guide you a bit.
Okay, all right, any other ideas? How was the travel? How was the parking? Isn't it hot? Isn't it cold? Isn't it dark? And I think that's, that yes, we know that small talk is important. But actually, we've got very small amount of time in a consultation. And and we need to think about using small talk incredibly effectively. So how about we use a small talk and we really think, well, actually, let's focus it. What's going to be most helpful from this small talk? How about we ask them what they're good at? So tell me about you. What are you good at? And I sometimes think it's so weird. So if they kind of look at you and think you're weird, you just say, well, you know what? I know you're here to talk about medical things, but actually I'd kind of like to know about you, who you are, what you're good at. Because actually for me it's really important to know what their skills are. Because if someone tells me if they're really good at science or their best subject's maths, then I need to think about explaining things in a very logical way. That perhaps they're not getting enough information. They want to know the science behind what's going on. If someone's telling me they're really into shopping or design, that's fine. I work with that. If someone tells me they spend a lot of time on computer systems, on playing Call of Duty, and I say, oh, do you have some headsets like this then? And they go, yes, because what? When your parents walk in the room? Because how many of you have got children who spend their lives on one of these playing on the Xbox? Yeah? And you're all looking a bit confused. Okay, so for those of you who are a bit confused, the teenagers these days, they sit in a dark room with a big screen playing the games, but they've also got one of these headsets on, and they're talking, and I was like, who are you talking to? And they're talking with all these other people, sometimes they're friends, sometimes they're just complete strangers, talking as they're playing killing each other. That's what the teenagers do. But you've got to work with that, and then you seem interested in it, because there's actually a lot of skill in it. Some young people who play these games record them playing their games and they sell them on YouTube. They put it on YouTube and they make money from these games. Is it relevant? Perhaps it is going to be relevant, but it shows that you're genuinely interested, and what you're going to try and do in your consultation is work out what's right for this patient. Because obesity, how much do we know about obesity? Who feels confident they know how to fix obesity? Yeah? Is that why we're all here today? Because actually, we don't really have a clue about what to do. And so we come along today to think, oh, what are we going to do? Maybe surgery, maybe not. But I think as an obesity specialist, I know very, very little about how to treat obesity. If someone's got cancer, if someone's got lymphoma, 80% will get better in 5 years. What's the rate in obesity? Pretty terrible, isn't it? So what's your agenda and what's your beliefs? Can you spend 30 seconds just discussing with your neighbour what's your agenda when you see a patient? What are you trying to get out of this consultation? Okay, can I have some volunteers about what's your agenda when you're seeing your patients? Maybe you tell me your job and then what your agenda is. Can I have some volunteers? Oh, you're very good at talking to each other. Okay.
I'm a pediatric nurse working in Stockholm.
Okay.
I try to help them where they are. Right now, we want to sort out quality.
Okay, so you've read my next slide. Okay, great. Okay, who else has got? What else other agendas do we have? Come on, paediatricians in the room. What's our agenda?
Not to frighten them.
Okay.
Make them
Yes, okay, yeah. To get them back in the door. Okay, important. What else? Is it to rule out medical causes of obesity? How many paediatricians are obsessed by that? Who worry about that? Hands? Oh, no. Okay. So I think that's varied. I think some paediatricians are very, very much focused on let's rule out these really rare causes of secondary obesity. What other ones have we got? Any other volunteers? The reason I ask is I think sometimes it's helpful to think about what we're trying to get out of the consultation, because often it's not at all aligned to what our patients want to get out of it. What do this family want from us? Because actually, if they're coming to us for purely they want to lose a lot of weight, and the only thing we're offering them is a weight loss intervention, a lifestyle intervention, that on average might lose them 1 or 2 kilo per metre squared of BMI points, actually, are they going to keep going with us? Or actually, pretty soon are they going to say, well, actually, this isn't working, I'm out of here. What do families want? And I think this is really important. So what I do at the consultation, I often say, what do you want to get out of this consultation? And you start writing a list. And okay, what do you mean by that? And you start writing a list. Because often they'll have lots of things you get what they want to get out of consultation. And there's no way I can often cover all of those. So I say, and then you assume that the most important one is at the top of the list, but actually it's often not. It's the one at the 6th or 7th on the list. Because when they've mentioned the first one, you've gone, okay, sounds good, and you've heard about it, and they go, anything else? And they've tested you on a pretty neutral topic. And they've realised that you're listening, you're not being judgmental, realise they're not shocked by their question or by their demand. And then the next thing comes up, and then the next. And I tend to find often the more personal things come up later, 3rd, 4th, the more important things, the self-harm, the low mood, the not leaving home. They not often don't mention that first. So, are they self-harming? Particularly for the boys, have they got gynecomastia? And from my experience, if we don't address that, if we don't see that's an issue, and we don't fix it, they don't come back. Because if they lose a few kilos, that's not going to disappear. The only thing that's going to make that disappear is surgery. Breast reduction surgery to remove that. And I've learned early on that we've really got to focus it. And more now, when I examine patients and I notice they've got a lot of excess tissue around the chest, you say, are you okay to change it at school? Because so many will not do any exercise at school, will not change in the changing rooms because they're so embarrassed about it. Are they wanting to be like Barbie? Are they expecting to lose an unrealistic amount of weight? Barbie's BMI? Anyone? So yeah, there's various estimates, aren't there? Sort of somewhere between 15 and 17. 16.3 seems to come up a lot. This is the evidence is pretty slim on this, actually, but 16.3 comes up a lot. And it's difficult. If your BMI is 40, are you going to get to a BMI of 16.3? You're not, are you? Even if you develop a pretty full-going eating disorder, you're very unlikely to get to a BMI of 16.3. The rash around that neck, I've kept on scrubbing it, I'm scrubbing it. Do they realise what it is? No. But maybe they want to know about what that rash is. Or is it purely fixated on the weight? And I think as a paediatrician, we need to work out what the issues are for the patients and work with them. Because actually, once we're working with their issues, most of the other things we can work on very easily. And seeing the patient alone. Who here sees the patients alone? It's difficult, isn't it? It's really difficult. And the reason I mentioned this in the first 2 minutes wasn't because I'm suggesting see the patient alone in the first 2 minutes, but you need to mention it in the first 2 minutes. Because if you don't mention it in the first 2 minutes, but later on say, okay, now we're going to speak alone, the kind of family goes, oh, where did that come from? What have I said wrong? But actually, I think families need time to prepare. Lots of doctors say to me, actually, I find it really hard. Parents don't want to leave the room. My response to that is, with me, parents always happy to leave the room. So what am I doing differently? Here's my hypothesis. At the beginning, you mentioned to them that it's normal for you to see young people on their own. And we do it with everybody. Normalise it right at the beginning. And we say to them, actually, we do it for everybody because we know partly it's good practice to start seeing doctors on your own to get you starting being ready to be an adult. And also, there's private stuff that none of us want to talk about in front of other people, do we? To the parents. And they kind of go, well, fair enough. There is private stuff. I want to talk to doctors by themselves. And also, it gets them starting to think about who you are, and also start to think, do I trust this person? Is this a sort of person that I'm going to leave my teenager with in a room and feel confident that this doctor is going to be sensible and safe with them? And usually by the time later on the consultation or at the next consultation, you say, okay, I think it's time to see the young person alone. Nearly all families say no. And the families who don't want to say hello, see the young person alone. I usually see the parent alone. Then I see the parent alone. I go, okay, what's this about? And they always just say it as it is with me. They say, we've just got divorced. I don't know how to tell him. I'm not sure if he knows. What will you say if he brings it up? Or, he was abused as a child. He's very sensitive about it. Various different things they feel they just suddenly tell you, okay, what's this about? And then you go, okay, can I see them alone now? Okay, fine. So actually, don't be scared of seeing the young person by themselves. Because actually, if you're confident and if you set the ground rules, my experience is, and the experience from our team who did a lot of work working with young people, is that it happens. It doesn't have to be on the first consultation, maybe at the second one. So particularly in my diabetes clinic, where it's often busy, and you say, right, let's spend the first few minutes of each consultation with you alone. And if you get into that habit of seeing them alone at the beginning, right, you alone first and the parents can come in later. It's actually really, for me, it's the only way I can remember, because otherwise I run out of time. You suddenly realise the next patient's due and you haven't seen the young person alone.